Shit, why am I out of storage space?
He will be live.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Uh, Hello and welcome to Boomer Live once again. And we are back and we're going to be talking about Australia versus Sri Lanka today. And obviously, after last night's big upset, you can say anything is possible in this World Cup to start off with. Afghanistan really showing it to the world what they possibly can do. And on the other end of things, Australia are on the bottom of the table officially, and they want to get off the mark. And the stat says whenever they lost two games in a row, they've not made to the knockouts. Can they turn it around? Can they possibly get their first win? And in the other end, Sri Lanka have lost their skipper Shanaka, and he will not be featuring in the tournament. They've looked like the worst bowling side of the tournament. So two teams who've had the fair share of problems are up against each other. So finally, one of them is going to get their first win, and the other is going to be languishing at the bottom of the table with three losses until and unless it's a washout. But as of now, that's how things are standing. But let's get into this game, Jaren. An interesting game of cricket which awaits us. Anything is possible in this game. For Australia, especially, they want to make a mark, and they want to make a mark in a way that they want to send out messages saying that don't write us off already as you all did. We can come back stronger because if they win today, they'll be on par with the English team or any other team who are equal on level points with 2 points each. And that's not a bad stat to have. But to get off the mark is the most important factor here.
Oh yeah, I mean, two teams that has really been, that's really difficult when it comes to their start at least, and I mean, it's been tough going for both of them. With Sri Lanka as well, we've expected a lot more, lot more when it comes to their performance in the World Cup because they are a team which has done really well in Asia when it comes to one days. I know one day has not been their strong suit for a long time, but at least in the recent past, they've been doing pretty well. But all of that is obviously now the World Cup, it has really not transpired, and that's been the biggest issue. And I mean, if you just look at, I mean, Australia especially, I think the middle order collapses that has started from that South Africa series has just continued throughout the World Cup. That's hurt them a lot. And last match, it was just completely. It just seemed like they lost the plot completely with a lot of mistakes when it comes to fielding as well. And to be very frank, I think it just felt like last game it was not Australia playing; it was another team. But I think there's one thing that we discussed last time as well is that if there's one team that can make a comeback from this position, that is Australia. And they've got some of their more easier matches. This being one of them, because Sri Lanka is not at all in its best form, and now they've lost the one player I would say has provided X factor to this team, and that is their captain Dasun Shanaka. Because Dasun Shanaka's captaincy is really ushered in a new era for them when it comes to
Yeah.
performances, when it comes to one day performances, or just that fighting spirit that he brings into this team. But now he is gone. They have a new captain as well, so things are looking rough for the team. So it's two teams who are looking to make a comeback, and I have a feeling Australia has a slight edge because of the loss of Dasun Shanaka for this team now.
Interesting that you mentioned about the Australian slight edge. But what has Australia done wrong over here, right? But if you look at the last game as well, they've had majority of the issues with batting, and I still think they are a much better batting side than what they've been doing. I think it's about time for the likes of David Warner, Steve Smith, all to take up the mantle and say we have to do our jobs, and we have to do our jobs quite perfectly, because they can't let the middle order being exposed every now and then. They can't let Maxwell walking on in the power play, or they don't want a Marcus Jones to be in the crease while the power play is going on, because they all have a set role which has been defined to them, and that's what they would want to do. I don't want you don't want things to be all over the place within the span of the power play as well, which was happening in South Africa. It was happening in Sri Lanka as well. They had two games in a very quick succession of time where things just fell apart for them. But Jaren, today talking especially about the way in which how things are looking, I think one factor which we have to consider is the importance in which they have their opening stand. Mitchell Marsh hasn't really stepped up. You would want the likes of Mitchell Marsh to also step up in a better way.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big disappointment for them. In fact, before the World Cup, we were all worried about how David Warner is going to perform this World Cup. And he looked like the player, the weaker link in that opening partnership because, I mean, Mitch Marsh, if you guys remember, was going all guns blazing. But, having said that, you would have to say that Mitch Marsh has been stuck, and that's been a big issue for them. Now, interestingly enough, they're not getting those starts, but I think that's still not their major concern, because I think if you still look at it, it's just been a complete disarray so far when it comes to Australia in this World Cup. Because if you see, no one's really performing for them, and with the bat, at least there are people who are getting starts, but that is really not converting, and that is the reason why they're being hurt so much. If you look at if you look at the teams, right? I mean, if you look at the players that have performed so far for Australia, with the bat is a big issue for them. Now, who is going to be the one to stand up with the bat is the bigger question, and it has to be. I think for me, it has to be I mean, it has to be Steve Smith. It has to be Mitchell Marsh, because these lads have shown in the past that they can bat well. And I don't know what is it with Mitch Marsh. It's certainly not capability, because it's not like he's already shown us that he can be a player who can do a very good job for them. But unfortunately, for some reason, he's not performing, and I think that reason is a lot of mentality, and or at least it's the issue has been the mental side of things and not really the skill, right? Because you've seen him perform in India well. In fact, his performance as an opener started off in India, where he was given that opportunity to come up the order. And that's where you saw. I know that Travis Head has joined the team. We don't know about his fitness yet, but him joining the team certainly means that, probably in the next 2-3 matches, if not today itself. I mean, today I don't expect, obviously, but at least maybe in the next couple of weeks, you might see him start playing. But then the question is, will it be too late by that point in time? And even if Travis Head comes in, most likely he's looking to replace the likes of not Mitch Marsh, but rather Manas Labuschagne. But again, the question here is, Mitch Marsh has not looked good at all. If you still consider remove the strike rate, Manas Labuschagne has been their highest run getter, and that's 73 runs, by the way, in 2 matches. So really not helping them at this point in time. They are yet, I think, and they are yet to score a 50 or 100, this batting team, and that's where how many players can you change? And if you look at the Australian nation at this point in time, these are the best batters you will find in that team, in that country. There's no replacements for most of these lads. So a lot of it has to do with, I think, a fresh start. They have to forget that 2 matches have happened and now look at the World Cup from the match starting from today. Consider the past two as exhibition matches and just look forward from here. But the biggest issue now, Abel, is also the fact that there's spin playing ability, right? If you look at the teams in this World Cup, Australia has a second worst average when it comes to playing spin in all conditions in 2023. So they've gone in South Africa and they've played spin as well. And usually when you go to South Africa, your average improves, but that has not been the case. I mean, only team which has done worse than them when it comes to average is Afghanistan, and Afghanistan has been a volatile team. But even
Yeah,
Netherlands has done a decent job when it comes to playing spin. So I mean, that's where I think Netherlands also. I think Netherlands and Afghanistan are the two teams. But if you look at then, everyone else is doing better than Australia. So
absolutely.
that's where this team has genuinely got to improve. That's their spin playing ability, and that's also the reason why in the middle orders they struggle.
Absolutely. I think if you just look at the catching efficiency as well, how they've been extremely poor on the field, one factor which we'll have to consider is this: how poor have they been in terms of dropping catches? That's been a major factor. Last game dropped close to 6 to 7 catches, and then you can talk about India also there in that list. But ultimately, one of the worst fielding sides of this tournament has been Australia. Just on the face of it, they've been extremely poor. They've had a lot of misfields. They've not created opportunities for themselves, and ultimately, they've got themselves to blame than anyone else. And that's also because of the body language which they've shown in the last couple of games. They've not been there and thereabouts, except for certain phases in the game. You can talk about the way in which they made a comeback against South Africa, or where they had India of 2 for 3. And that they've not looked like Australian teams of the past.
I mean, in many ways, what has happened with this team is surprising, to be very frank. I mean, now that you're showing me the stat, it's something that I've never expected Australia to be part of in that. I mean, we've been criticizing Pakistan. They've done a very good job if you look at that. If you look at that list, surprising really, you would have to say. We don't really know what's the reason because you look at this team. They've got some amazing fielders, some of the best fielders in this World Cup. We look at David Warner, Steve Smith, Manas Labuschagne, I mean Cameron Green, Glenn Maxwell. I think I just have to start listing out the squad if I mention some of the best fielders in the world because these lads have taken stunners in the past. These lads have shown incredible patience and incredible efficiency when it comes to fielding. I mean, it's just not been Australia's ODI year for a past couple of months. You will have to say. Um, I mean, I don't know. I don't think this is a worse team as well. I mean, if you look at the team this year and you look at 2019, I think 2019 had a worse off team because there were so many holes in that team. Steve Smith, David Warner just returning from that sandpaper gate. But if you look at this team seems a lot more settled. So there's no explanation that can be given, right? It's not like these players are shown consistently bad fielding in a long time. So I'm surprised to be very frank.
Yeah, I agree with that. But adding to that, one thing which they'll be slightly, concerned about is also this: how they've never really crossed that mark whenever they've lost the first two games, as I already mentioned. That's an interesting point which they'll also have in their mind. Couple says both the teams would be hungry for a win to be alive in the World Cup. Otherwise, one more loss will get them online for disqualification. I agree with you, couple. That's a major concern for them. But as I mentioned, for Australia, they want their big boys to step up, especially David Warner to step up today. It's about time that he steps up because he looked good in that India game against South Africa. He was out of place, but if he can start scoring runs alongside Steve Smith, and everybody can play along with David Warner, around David Warner rather, that's one major factor they've had to miss in the first two games. Even in that first game, if David Warner had played big against India, that would have been a different game. That's a missing piece right now. If David Warner starts scoring runs, then Australia all of a sudden looks like a different team. But if David Warner doesn't score runs, and if they're going to be one down or two down within the power play, then the workload will have to be shared among Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith, Glenn Maxwell, Josh English, or for that matter, even Marcus Joynes. And that's not a good thing to have, especially if you are a top class team like Australia. You'd want to have good opening starts. You want one of your openers to score big. And considering what David Warner has done in the past for Australia, he is their go to man once again in this ODI World Cup team.
I mean, you have to say that David Warner has still been one of the better batters for this team because he's gotten the starts. He's looked like he's scoring some. He's going to score some runs, and he's I think the third highest run getter, or fourth highest run getter. Surprisingly enough, the third highest run getter is Mitch Stark. So overall, if you see, their batting is just not gotten off in this World Cup. They've not been able to. I mean, just been two matches. They faced two of the toughest bowling attacks in this World Cup with South Africa and India, both under the. I mean, I wouldn't say especially South Africa under the lights was never gonna be easy. Today they'll feel a lot more comfortable, but there is going to be a surprise waiting for them, right? The fact that in Lucknow. Now, I know in the last, if you look at from 2019 to 2022, the average score was not more than 250 in one day cricket in Lucknow. But this year, it's been quite a lot more. It's been 311. Obviously, that's also because of how much more easier it has been to bat this World Cup in Lucknow. But having said that, I mean, you'd have to say that. You would have to say that it's not going to be easy for Australia to come out here and play because this is still a place where Sri Lanka will feel, that they have that advantage because Australia struggled against spin this year. Their batters seem to not be able to judge whether you want to go after the bowling or go, or rotate the strike. And if you look at the ones who've done well, it's been the offies, both the right arm off spinner and the left arm off spinner. They have been the ones who've done really well. Sri Lanka have a lot of them. You've got Tikshana, you've got Dhananjay Risilva, you've got Velalage. So Australia will feel the heat for sure. And that's where you probably think that Sri Lanka have, at least when it comes to their bowling, will feel a lot more confident because they'll feel like they have the bowlers to do well on this pitch. But then these are still bowlers who are underconfident, right? None of them have done well. These are still young bowlers playing on the big stage, and Australia have got World Cup winners in their team. So that's where it's going to be probably a battle of mentality versus,
Yeah.
skills. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to a World Cup, right, you would say on 9 out of 10 days that Australia is probably the third or the second best skilled team in this World Cup. But here they are languishing at the bottom. So it's going to be a lot about who's going to show that fighting spirit, and that's where I back the Aussies. I genuinely think a wounded Australian team is a very difficult team to beat.
True, but today they are going to be chasing once again in Lucknow. Sri Lanka won the toss. They are going to be batting as the update what we get, and obviously, one change which Sri Lanka made is Shanaka goes out, Chamika Karunaratne comes in, and also Lahiru Kumara is another addition they've had in this team because I've always felt they are lacking a bowler. They've dropped Patirana now, so they've brought in Lahiru Kumara. Patirana looked awful in the first two games. He looked like he could go for plenty of runs, and he went for a lot of runs in the first game, in the second game as well. Unfortunate for him, he's still making a mark in the longer format of the game. He's a good T20 bowler, but in the one-day format, he still has a long way to go. I think Lahiru Kumar is an interesting addition to this team. I think he's got the ability to pick up wickets in the middle overs. He can ball with the new ball, and he's got the extra pace as well. But Australia will enjoy the extra pace. Australia's trouble will really be if Tikshana gets a little bit of turn or Velalage gets the ball to turn as well. For Australia, the first job they'll have in their hand is to restrict Sri Lanka to a mere score and then try to chase it down. Because remember, for Sri Lanka, they've got one man who's been exemplary. That's Kushal Mendes, who's really had an outstanding year so far. He's had a good tournament, and not to forget, he's been exemplary against spin as well. If you look at this tournament as well, Sri Lanka have not nothing wrong with the bat. They've been one of the most impressive batting sides in this tournament. With Kushal Mendes there, they've got the likes of Patam Nisanka scoring. They've got likes of Sadira Samarvikrama scoring. They've had only issues in the lower middle order with likes of Dhananjay De Silva, or for that matter, Shanaka. Shanaka did well in the first game, but not very impressive in the second game. So they want the lower middle order to score well, and at the same time, top order to do the job that they did against Pakistan. How important is this game going to be, especially for Sri Lanka's batting to come good once again, so that their bowlers have enough to defend?
Oh yeah, it's going to be massive because I mean Sri Lanka's batting has looked good. You would see in patches, but they've not gotten the work done yet. I mean, the first innings they were facing way too much to really do anything, and you knew that even if the start they got, they would have to keep going on for a long time, and that was not going to simply happen. But on the other hand, you would have to say that I think the captain of Sri Lanka is Kushal Mendes, if I'm not
Kushal
wrong.
Mendes, yeah.
Yeah, it's Kushal Mendes. So, and he's going to be one of the main players for them, right? I mean, leading up to this team because he's been the man who's been providing them starts. If you look at this World Cup as well, he's one of the highest run getters. Already scored 198 runs in just two matches. So he's and probably even, and then the next one to come in is Samara Vikrama. But even there, right? The issue with Mendes has been he's not played the long game. He's gotten the starts. He's not the kind of a player, also, granted. He's someone who will give you the start and then you have to carry on from there. I am a little disappointed with the likes of Asalanka and even especially I think Patum Nisanka because these guys have gotten a lot of starts. They haven't really played longer than they should. I mean, they have not really gone on to do well as well. And Dhananjay Silva has been a big disappointment for me because I believe he's someone who can play, at least 20, 30 overs when he does well. But he's been coming low down the order. I know he's expected to attack, but he's still not done that role really well. He's someone who can play a dangerous game, but he's also not turned up yet. So those are the players that you would want to do well. This team has shown promise, but it just seems like they try to bat 30 overs and not 50 overs. So they need to
Absolutely.
slow down a little bit and try and play in that sense. Because otherwise, they're going to struggle big time because they've got the necessary strike rates, but then their average is the question.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been an issue with the Sri Lankan team. They've got the players, they've got this volatility, they've got this impressive mercurial effect, and within the batting order, every player can go on to play the big game. They can turn the match on its head. But I still think with this team, they'd rather prefer chasing than batting first. I understand that 425 really demoralized them, but how often is a 425 going to happen? It might happen once in a blue moon. With that batting they've got, they should back themselves to chase totals down. I'm very surprised until unless a pitch is a slow one or a dry one, they shouldn't be batting first. But it's interesting. As what you saw in Lucknow under lights, the ball does tend to move around a little bit, and that might just put Australia into trouble as well. Remember, Australia were bamboozled against South Africa when the ball started to move around with Lahiru Kumar there, Madhu Shankar with the left arm angle. They'd want to pick up some quick wickets, especially in the second innings. And for Sri Lanka, they want the big boys, especially Kushal Perera to fire today. If Kushal Perera fires alongside someone like Kushal Mendes, Sri Lanka will be in a better state to push a big total. And also Sadira Samaravikram are playing well. I think Sri Lanka and Australia are on level footing at this point. They both have fair share of their weaknesses. With Australia, it's the batting. With Sri Lanka, it's the bowling. So who overpowers each other or outpowers each other is going to be certainly the winner. For Australia, especially, they don't want to group themselves because they're too good a team to be playing like that. And you all know the quality they have in each player. If a couple of their players click, then you know they can take the game away single-handedly. That's Australia's strength, what they have. That's about it from us. But before we end, let's check out the fantasy team for today. Remember to play the fantasy contest with Boomer 11 already. If you haven't already made your team, you got 15 minutes to go. Yes, so that's the fantasy team for today. As you saw, David Warner, Mitchell Stark are the captain and vice captain picks from our side. If Mitchell Stark has a good game, and especially picking up the top order, picking up three to four wickets today, that's going to help Australia's chances as well. And David Warner scoring a lot of runs is what Australia will be hoping in today's game because they wouldn't want a wicket to be lost in the power play where they are two down within the score of 30, and when Steve Smith and Manus and Josh English is doing a job for them. So for Australia, they would want the big boys to step up, and for Sri Lanka, they would want a revival in their bowling. That's about it. Thank you guys once again for joining us. See you all very soon. Bye bye.